Well, hello, and welcome back to that thing we like to call Curlis Mania, where we talk all things pop, rock, and prog. And
Absolutely right.
that's right. And with us today, welcoming back to the channel, Mr. Scott Davis. How are you, Scott?
I'm great, Tom. Thanks for having me back. It's great to be here. This
Oh,
might be a fool's errand, but we're gonna try.
yeah. We're already before we start taping, we're already talking about how hard this one's going to be. I mean, and not only are we doing this on election day too, by the way.
Oh
Uh,
yes.
so it's like we're not talking Trump or Harris here. We're talking about progressive rock voting here. We're talking about some of the kings. I would say like sort of the tail. I would say the tail end of progressive rock. This was the band. Like
Mhm.
it was like the last hope for progressive rock. Here we go. It's the band UK. Which UK, the debut came out in what was it, 1978?
78, correct.
1978, the
Mhm.
debut. And so we're just taking, they'd made two records, so we're just gonna do a battle on the debut versus the follow-up, Danger Money, which was 1979. So
Absolutely love it.
so it's just both of these records are killer albums. That's all we're talking about already. They're both amazing in different ways. And so we just figured we'd challenge ourselves today and really put our knowledge and taste, musical taste to the test. Um, but so what's your, I always like, I'm kind of doing this thing now where I just say, the first thing I do is I say, Scott, what was your first exposure to UK? When was the first time you heard them?
Oh, that's a good question. My band in high school, Hydra, and for a few years afterwards, uh, Duff Tool and I listened to a lot of different prog, and that was just in there. I remember the first time I bought it. My parents had divorced, and my dad was living in Lexington, Kentucky, and teaching at UK. And
Mhm.
I bought the first UK album at a record store that I really liked. There, it was called Cut Corner, and they only dealt in cutouts.
Oh,
So everything in the place was $3, $4,
oh,
whatever it
really?
was. It was all cheap. That's where I bought the first Van Halen record.
Hmm.
Um, but that I have a very strong memory of buying it there, and I think I bought the first Toto album on the same day,
Oh, wow.
at the
Okay.
same time.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, the line.
yeah, oh man, love that record too. But it was. I don't have a strong memory of how I was exposed or what made me select that. Um, I knew about Bill Bruford, obviously.
Right.
And we knew a little bit through Duff's older brother Dan. We knew a little bit about Bruford's solo stuff. We'd heard "Feels Good to Me."
Hmm.
The other stuff that obviously hadn't come out yet. We knew who Ellen Holdsworth was. There's
Hmm.
no, Alan Holdsworth. That's all you got to say. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
He'd been around for a little bit already.
He had done a lot of under the radar stuff. But yeah. What about you?
Yeah, no, I think same kind of thing. My buddy, you always have the one buddy who's like the prog rock guy, and I had a friend Scott Schroep, who was we used to go to New York all the time and go record shopping, and we were just well into prog rock. We were huge Genesis guys. We loved DLP. We loved all the classic Yes. We loved Yes, all the classic prog stuff, and we were always hungry for more. We wanted more. So obviously, like you said, we knew Bill Bruford. We had heard about UK. He finally bought I think it was like secondhand tunes or something he bought it the debut, and he was like, Tom, you got to hear this, man, this is a really good record. It was like we didn't really know much about it, and we heard it and was like, oh yeah, this is great.
It's uh, it's breathtaking in its timelessness.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it's incredible on absolutely every level. A good friend of mine, I were having a conversation not too long ago, and he proffered the opinion that there is no such thing as a perfect album, and I would disagree because both of these records we're going to talk about today are perfect
Mhm.
in every conceivable way that you can evaluate a recording,
Mhm.
songwriting, playing. composition, engineering, production, artwork.
Mhm.
They're perfect albums. A lot of my favorite bands can't say that they've ever put out a perfect album,
Right,
but
right.
these two albums are
They're
stunning,
chef's kiss.
breathtaking. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I mean, but it's, so basically, I mean, essentially after Red, John Wetton was shocked when Robert Fripp basically said we're done. They had just made this great album, King Crimson, as a trio, and they were like on a roll and they were touring, and all of a sudden Robert's like, I'm done, I'm out. And so, but Robert, of course, in his inimitable way, says, "You guys can continue, right? You guys can continue as King Crimson without me." And they're like, "What? No, we can't. What are you talking about? No way." So, but then I think it kind of put a seed in Wetton's mind that maybe I could continue with another something else, and so he got together with Jobson basically, right? And they recruited. I guess he and Jobson started at UK, and then they invited Bruford to be part of it, and
Well,
then
it was a little
right, is that
circuitous.
right?
You skipped over the involvement of one Rick Wakeman in all this process.
Oh, I didn't know anything about that. Okay,
Let's see here. Bruford and Wetton next approached Fripp to reform Crimson. When Fripp eventually declined, Bruford and Wetton decided that each would choose a musician in order to form a new band. Oh, wait a minute. The Wakeman stuff is before that. Let me go back. Wetton spent a brief time with Roxy Music, which also included Eddie Jobson. This would be in '74,
right.
before joining Uriah Heep for 2 albums. In July '76, after leaving Heep, Wetton reconnected with Bruford, recording demos originally proposed for John Wetton's solo album. Two of
Okay,
these demos were later released on the compilation Monkey Business in 1998. In September of '76, they formed a band with keyboardist Rick Wakeman, who had previously worked with Bruford in Yes. The project was stopped after rehearsals by Wakeman's label and management. According to Bruford, quote, A&M Records were unwilling to let their star, Wakeman, walk off with a used, slightly soiled King Crimson rhythm section, and the idea failed at that point.
ah,
So
okay.
Bruford and Wetton sat down and they next approached Robert Fripp in an effort to reform King Crimson.
Hmm.
He eventually declined, and Bruford and Wetton decided they would each choose one musician in order to form a new band. Wetton brought in Eddie Jobson,
Hmm.
who, since leaving Roxy Music in '76, had joined Frank Zappa's band, thus stealing him from Zappa.
Right.
Bruford recruited down Holdsworth, formerly of, here's a laundry list here, Soft Machine, Nucleus, Gong, Tempest, and the Tony Williams Lifetime, which is a brilliant record if you've never heard it, who had played on Bruford's solo album. So that's how they ended up at the 4 guys that played on that first album. The Wakeman thing is not widely known. It was rumored for a long time. This is the first time I ever saw any solid quotes about it from either Bill or John. So there it is. He was involved, and his record label and management stepped in and said, "Nope, not going to allow this. Sorry." Because you got to remember, Rick was a big star at that point.
Mhm.
He
Right.
was he was a runaway hit everywhere in the world except America.
Yeah, right. I mean, he made those Six Wives of Henry the Eighth, and
Journey
that
to
that
the
was that was a
Center,
big
and
hit, you know.
yeah.
So
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 yeah,
anyway, so yeah, so there's the core four. They like you said, Wetton, and it is important. That's why I want to bring this up, is that Wetton chose Jobson, and Bruford chose Holdsworth, and that
correct.
that comes into play later. We're
It
gonna
does come into play. You are absolutely correct, my
talk.
friend.
We'll
It
talk more
does.
about that later. But
Yeah.
so let's jump into the debut. It was released April '78 and on EG Records. It was recorded at Trident Studios in London, and I believe it was self-produced, or maybe they had somebody helping them. Um,
Um, that's not in my notes. I apologize.
no, I don't. I think so. It says produced by UK. Yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
they got
yeah,
anybody.
they did themselves. Yeah.
So there you go. So yeah, so I know we got a lot to say about this record. So let's jump into it. Let's
For
go.
me, if you don't mind a baseball analogy, I'm going to throw out a baseball analogy for those of you who are into baseball. UK is the Pete Rose of modern progressive rock. There is no modern progressive rock as we know it without those two UK albums. It simply does not happen. There are so many things that they brought to the forefront on both these records. With the first UK album, they did it with a more fusion blend. And with Danger Money, it's more of a what Andy Edwards would call a proper prog record.
Right.
So there is all of that. But anyway, first UK album, side one opens with that famous ensemble stomp in 7/4. Dun, dun,
Okay.
dun, 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 dun. The time signature will move around playfully throughout the song, but maintains that 7 pulse off and on throughout. The ostinato is soon joined over the top with Jobson introducing to Jobson had a voice as a keyboard player. It wasn't just how he played things, which is very precise and very clean and very imperious almost to everything that he played. But he had instruments that he chose carefully. He didn't have banks and banks of synthesizers. He had the Yamaha CS80 polyphonic synthesizer, which has an extremely unique voice. It would do things that other keyboards wouldn't do at the time and couldn't do for many years after. The venerable Mini Moog, the Yamaha CP70 electric grand piano, and of course the Hammond organ. We're going to touch on all of these throughout these, but he would select these different instruments and basically own the sound of that instrument at any given time and really feature it. Anyway, the ostinato is soon joined over the top with Jobson introducing us to the CS80. Shortly after, Bruford features his signature approach on the drums with the rim shot and the Remo rototoms. At just over 40 seconds, we hear that voice, that prototypical British, thick, rich cognac of John Wetton's voice. It's one of the most pleasing sounds in all of music, as far as I can tell. When John opens his mouth, you're guaranteed to hear something at least wonderful, if not stunning. As one of the premier vocalists in progressive music, Wetton's smooth, rich delivery is always welcome. Around the 1 minute mark, Wetton's voice is layered with octave harmony parts, giving an otherworldly, almost feminine quality to that particular vocal. More tight ensemble playing and emphasis on the handful of alternate melodies moves on to an 11/8 time signature. That's something else that UK was masters of, and Kansas was also a master. And yes, Genesis as well. Alternate melodies, playing a section that had a melody that was absolutely strong enough to have been a vocal melody, but it's not. And they leave it that way. They know how powerful the power of melody is, and they leave it that way, and it's gorgeous. Then suddenly, and in the dead of night, enters one Mr. Alan Holdsworth, and we will call him Mr. here. No one like him, ever, before, since, ever. There will never, ever be anyone that plays a guitar in the way that Alan Holdsworth played a guitar. There are several guys that are able to copy his style very, very well, and they're pleasant to listen to. But with Alan, it came from somewhere else. And that solo in the Dead of Night is influential to so many players who don't give a crap about progressive music, but just enjoy virtuosic guitar.
Oh, absolutely.
They all know that solo, or lead, as I like to call it.
Right.
While Wetton and Bruford drive on insistently and Alan makes history, Jobson provides wonderful, ever-evolving chordal support. And that's one of the truly breathtaking things about this first album. You have 4 acknowledged virtuoso players in their respective realms. They were those virtuosos when they went into the studio to make this record. Egos probably should and probably were a little out of control, but you never hear it. They
Mhm.
each give one another the space to create and breathe, and they work as an ensemble. It's, there's a saying, a miracle is what seems impossible but happens anyway.
Mhm.
And
Right.
I love to describe this first UK album in that fashion. It's four incredibly talented men making this wonderful music, and they never step on one another's toes.
No, no. I mean, I have that in my notes a bunch of times. Amazing ensemble playing.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's a great word, ensemble, because
Yeah.
it's so, in my own music I always try and create that illusion by myself, and it's very difficult.
It's
These
hard.
guys do it effortlessly.
Mhm.
Okay, by the light of day, the mood now downshifts with an arpeggio from the CS80, and the mood pads in the background under a gorgeous vocal. As he always does, Bruford provides tactful and inventive accompaniment. He is such a master of playing precisely what the song needs, even if it's totally unexpected. I love
Yeah.
that about Bill.
Yes.
When the drums enter proper in 5/4 time for the violin lead, the harmonized backing vocals provide a perfect bed for Jobson to just sort of play over the top of. The overall mood is a pensive one filled with wonderful harmony and counterpoint. Wetton plays some lovely bass guitar prior to the polyphonic portamento showcase for the CS80.
Mhm.
More of that later in Alaska,
Mhm.
which, yeah, we'll talk about Alaska here in a
Oh
minute.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Then we get into Presto Vivace and Reprise. After a brief drum intro, and I would like to point out that the drums on this record are correctly panned audience perspective. It's
Okay.
as someone who makes records, it drives me crazy when drums are panned from the drummer's perspective. I get why they do that. That's not what you hear when you go to a concert.
Right. Right.
The drums are panned audience perspective.
Mhm.
And quite frankly, the reason I cling to that is all Rush records are panned audience perspective.
Yes.
That was my benchmark in those days. Look, that's how it should be done, and that's what I like, and I appreciate that here.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Presto Vivace, notoriously one of the most demanding keyboard parts ever written. Absolutely hysterically, comically difficult to play.
Crazy. Yeah.
So, of course, Jim Gilmore from Saga can play it with both hands. Jim does not get his due. He is such a fantastic musician. Anyway, the time signature is constantly shifting here along with the key. It just
Yes.
moves all
Yes.
over the
It's
place. It's
constant.
chromatic.
Yes.
Yeah, chromatic nonsense, but it works. Bruford, Jobson, and Wetton give their all here, foreshadowing some of what would come later on Danger Money. Then back to the intro at the head of In the Dead of Night. I'm not sure how Wetton played this song live and sang that vocal over the top because they're completely divorced from one another.
Yeah.
But he
Yeah.
did it.
Does it?
I saw him do it.
Yeah.
He did it wonderfully. Let's see. More octave harmonies in the refrain. Again, the CS80 is featured here with support from some fuzz bass and Taurus pedals, and then we come to the end of that. Next up, we have 30 Years. Absolutely beautiful song. Gorgeous,
Gorgeous.
wonderful,
Uh,
haunting song. Do you know what 30 years is?
no.
That's the amount of time the average person spends in bed in their lifetime.
Oh, interesting.
A
Okay.
third of your life,
That
30
makes
years.
sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah. Yeah.
Lovely haunting chords from the CS80 support Holdsworth's immaculate classical guitar explorations. I do so wish that he would have, investigated the possibilities of that sound more in his career, but
Yeah.
he stuck to other things, and I'm so grateful that he did it here. Flanged vocals lament the amount of time the average person spends asleep in a lifetime. When the group comes crashing in, the venerable Mini Moog makes its presence known with a wonderful secondary melody, which is restated at the end. Crunchy groove in 6 gives way to another Mini Moog lead. Jobson excels at most things, but his lead work here, trading off with Holdsworth, is especially stunning. Allen gives Eddie a real run for his money on this one. After the last verse, Holdsworth returns to the secondary melody from the beginning and closes it out with emotion and confidence, just ringing out just that much more emotion, that much more juice out of it. He takes that melody that Eddie states at the beginning on a Moog, which was already very well constructed, and he just gives it that much more.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
and the piece Alaska, of course, is the showpiece for the CS80, the Yamaha CS80.
Yeah. Yes.
Somehow Eddie instinctively knew what to do with that thing as soon as he got it, and a lot of other fine players have been mystified by it.
Yeah.
When Bill started the Bruford Band, which is another of my favorite things, and Dave Stewart, the keyboard player in that band, Bill wanted him to use the CS80 because Bill owned one,
Mhm.
and Dave just hated it. He never got along with it. They used it on one song on One of a Kind and
Oh,
never used it
interesting.
again.
All right.
Yeah,
Oh,
Dave was more of a Prophet 5 guy.
right. Right.
The CS80 has a very insistent treble about it that's extremely hard to wrangle properly. You've really got to program it carefully, or it can get away from you. But
Yeah.
anyway,
I love
Alaska,
that sort of ominous feel it gets. The beginning
yeah,
goes like, oh,
yeah.
got a
It's that
vibe.
it had two things that other keyboards of the era did not have. It had polyphonic aftertouch, which means that you could press the keyboard and apply, in the case of Alaska, a pitch bend, but only to certain notes,
Oh,
depending
okay.
on how hard you were pressing them. So it behaves like a pitch wheel, but unlike a pitch wheel, which affects all notes,
Mhm.
it was listening, or it was scanning for how hard you were pressing given keys.
Mhm.
So the notes that Eddie wanted to go sharp in that beginning section would press a little harder.
Yeah.
The other thing that it involves is called polyphonic portamento. And portamento is a sliding between two notes pitchwise, either from high to low or low to high. You'll play one note high, say, and you play a lower note. When you play the lower note, it'll go, ah.
Yes.
That's
Right.
portamento.
Yes. Right.
And you can do the same thing from low to high. This
Mm-hmm.
allows you to do it in the same way as the aftertouch I described, polyphonically, where each note can arrive at a different time depending on its pitch.
And I love
So,
that sound. I love it.
yeah,
So,
that was Alaska is the perfect meeting of a musician and an instrument. A musician who was forward thinking and imaginative, and an instrument that would do things that no one had heard before.
yeah. Yeah.
That and the fact that it weighs 125 pounds, I think, and also cost as much as a small car, kept a lot of players away from it. But that didn't stop
A
Eddie.
roadie's nightmare.
Yeah, so that was Alaska. Time to Kill. With the ensemble returning, we hear two more of Jobson's favorite instruments, the Hammond B3 and the Yamaha CP70 Electric Grand. More tight ensemble playing moves along a number of tricky changes that wind their way back to the verse and refrain. Wetton really lets loose with perhaps one of his best vocal performances
Yeah.
on Time to
Yes.
Kill.
I have that in my notes too. Yep.
So soulful,
Yep.
but just soulful enough. He's not overly histrionic with it. He really just sits it correctly. The refrain is big and catchy and hits at things to come in Danger Money, and even in Asia. You will hear little echoes of where John was going
Yeah.
in his writing if you listen closely.
Mm-hmm.
A violin lead section follows with some raging playing from Jobson. Nevermore. My notes are very short on this. The absolute best Alan Holdsworth moment ever
Mm-hmm.
is
Yeah.
the beginning of Nevermore. It's
Mm-hmm.
so stunningly well constructed. It's virtuosic, but it's soulful and melodic and powerful and so beautiful.
Yep.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's entirely unforgettable. I love that piece. I absolutely love everything about it. And then the album winds up with Mental Medication, another strong Holdsworth piece. These last two songs demonstrate clearly that Alan was so irreplaceable that John and Eddie didn't bother to replace him when he left the group. That's why they were a trio. Who's going to follow Alan Holdsworth?
Right.
Nobody.
Right.
Nobody.
Right.
It moves through some angry, angular sections before returning to the beautiful parts heard earlier. Several sections of burning ensemble work, there's that word again, arrives with Jobson and Holdsworth doing battle as only they can. The final bars of mental medication are among the most amazing moments I have ever heard in my life. Those layered Brian May style harmony, sustained things, it's just staggeringly beautiful. Every time I get to the end of this album, I'm affected in the same way as the first time I heard it. And that's just awe, shock, and awe.
No, I'm with you, Scott. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel the same way. I mean, I had a couple things, and Time to Kill. I had some at times it had. I said it's. You had mentioned that it was sort of catchy. I had the same notes. I said it actually has a pretty catchy chorus or kind of
Time
tagline.
to kill,
Yes,
going nowhere.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. And like you
yeah,
said, it kind of it's perfect, and it kind of predates Asia a little bit. And also, I have something about it has a little bit of a King Crimson feel, almost like Starless era King Crimson at times.
yeah. I would
uh,
agree with that.
You know, and then also the bass work and mental medication as well. Oh my God, this
Yeah.
oh my God, he's just he's just
I mean,
smoking on bass. It's like oh my God.
lest you forget that this guy was in King Crimson, he will remind you.
He'll remind you exactly, exactly.
Exactly.
And no, and his vocals throughout. I mean, you mentioned vocals a couple times, and I have many notes about the vote. Just he did a great job with the vocals on this record. He really is full voice. It's really, I mean, but not like you said, not crazy, not going way over the top, but he's really just singing so well this whole record.
Yeah, it's
You know?
I'm so yeah, there are lots of musical influences on me, both listening habits and writing habits, which are two different subsections of my brain. But UK falls into both of those uh, portions of my musical brain. Uh,
Mhm.
I can't imagine I can't imagine where it would have gone musically without the inspiration of this album and the one that came after.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's we have so much to say, so we're gonna have to move on quickly here
Yep.
to
Okay.
the next record, which is Danger Money, where they are down to a trio. I don't I saw an interview with John Wetton, and I think it was called Buffamundo or something on YouTube. And it's like this looks like a cable access show of these two guys. But it's a great interview, and he talks a lot about UK. And he basically says that it sounds to me like Alan Halsworth, brilliant musician, but like when they went on the road, there was some definitely some I don't know what there was some arguments or some discussions had between the two of them that maybe Alan needed to be a little bit more upfront, because he would step back and he'd go in the shadows, and he wasn't like a very outgoing guy. He was kind of just wanted to be a player. And I think that that was something that Wetton would be like, "Come on, man, let's go! Like, get in the spotlight, give it to the crowd." And he was not that kind of guy. Um,
I've heard that as well. I think it has really a lot more to do with the nature of Alan Holdsworth. He is an improvisational animal,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
John and Eddie wanted him to play those solos the way they are on the records, and
Oh, that's true.
he never once played those. So if you've heard the bootlegs, he never played anything
All
the
over the
same.
place. Yeah.
He was a free spirit in that way. He didn't want to
Yeah.
be nailed down. And that's
Right.
one of the reasons why Bill chose him, because he wanted that chaos element that
Hmm.
Alan brought to the
Yeah.
situation. So, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, well, it didn't work out. So they ended up, I think it ended up being basically Alan had to leave. And if Alan was leaving, then Bill was going to leave too, kind of thing.
Yep. Yep.
So even though Bill later said, "Wait a minute, I didn't say I was going to leave," but they was like too late. It was like I don't know. So anyway, so
Well,
yeah, I'm sorry. I ended up calling Terry Bozzio. So who
yeah.
I believe was playing not he played with Zappa, but I think he was playing with the Brecker brothers when they took him.
Yeah, my notes don't say anything about it just talks about the minor hit single Nothing to Lose. They kind of glossed over it. They didn't really say much of anything about, how Bosio came in. But yes, he was playing with Zappa prior.
Mhm.
And
Everybody steals from Zappa. Poor Frank Zappa. Everyone steals his musicians.
I wonder whether those guys had already been fired because Frank had a fire fetish.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, he loved to move people along when he thought it was time for them to go.
Hmm.
No matter how good they were. If he felt like it was time for them to move on and broaden their horizons, he did that a lot.
Yeah,
Frank was he was a caretaker of musicians in a lot of ways.
yeah,
Um,
he
you
was.
know,
He
he
was.
he would he would fire them. I heard him in an interview once. I can't remember what player he was talking. He said, "I fired him because I knew he would never quit."
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
remember who he was talking about, but anyway,
that's interesting. All
yeah.
right, well, let's jump into Danger Money, 1979.
Okay, Danger Money. Uh, this album has a lot to do with my compositional brain. Um, I am going to freely admit that I steal from it conceptually on a regular basis. There is a Kevin Gilbert bootleg that's called Beer Jam 2, if you can lay your hands on it. He is in the studio with a drummer friend, and they're just jamming and screwing around. And he starts trying to compose something like Eddie Jobson would. He makes a joke of it, but it's true about Eddie on this particular album. Pick a chord, any chord, and then play a bass note that has nothing to do with that chord. It's not even the same key. And Eddie really leaned into that on this record, particularly with the song Danger Money. John is playing all of these. This is something that John did quite a bit in King Crimson, so it might not have been all Eddie doing that. But John's always been one to go for bass notes that were not necessarily the root. Um,
Right,
anyway,
right.
Danger Money. Again, we're looking at sort of pre echoes of what would come in Asia. I feel
Yeah, yeah.
CS80 Portamento Madness. Hammond comes in at the ready. Bosio doing his Bosio thing, which is just echoes of Bruford in some ways, maybe tonally, the use of the rototoms. But Bosio is his own man, and he made that clear from the very first notes. I mean, he's there to drive them ahead in a new way, in a more rock oriented way, but still quite complex.
Hmm.
I would call the first album a fusion record more than a rock record,
Right.
although it's got plenty of rock about it. I
Hmm.
would call Danger Money a proper prog record. It's prog and flies that flag unabashedly.
Yeah.
Crazy middle section, bass notes in opposition, which I just mentioned. Crazy cool song. The texture and the atmosphere is so sinister. It has this real it has a dangerous quality about it. Like, they're talking about secret agents and stuff in it and hired killers, and it has that atmosphere about it. Rendezvous 602, beautiful piece of music, fully utilizing the CP70 electric piano. A bunch of CS80 moments in this one, too. Absolutely fantastic vocal. Again, Wetton, you know, if he wasn't such a great bass player as well, you'd say, geez, you should just stand there and sing. But his bass playing is immaculate. So why
Yeah.
would you not want that as well?
Right. Right.
Tasteful drumming throughout, ripping Moog lead. Uh, no one programs a Moog like Jobson. It's always got this tearing quality about it that just
Yeah.
slices through everything. I love that. I absolutely love it because when he plays a note on the Moog, it's been played.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And this is the
uh,
track that I felt. This is the track that really for me was like, oh, Asia's coming. Like when you hear this song,
a
it,
little bit.
a little bit sounds like something off of like Alpha or something, or
Yeah, just a little bit. I mean, it's more.
not quite. I mean, not quite, but
Yeah, but you can hear where Wetton was headed. You can
yeah,
hear
exactly.
what direction he wanted to go in. They wanted to sell more records at this point.
Oh, sure, sure, yeah.
They couldn't resist their progressive tendencies, but
Right.
they did want to sell more records.
Yeah.
The only thing she needs,
Oh,
totally whacked out intro in
oh man.
opposing time signatures. Now, if you sit down and figure this out, it was driving me crazy. The drums and the other instruments are actually in separate time signatures and have to be counted as such in order for them to meet up at the end. It's the most mind numbing exercise you can possibly imagine. Bosio is actually playing in 4/4, believe it or not. If you listen to it closely,
Really?
it's got a pulse to it. His kick drum is keeping that pulse, but he is playing across bar lines. And then when the whole band comes in, you know, it's just completely bizarre. The first time I heard it, I was like, "What is this?" This is
And then it's just
love that organ sound. I would kill to have that Hammond sound.
oh,
That's just so tight and aggressive. But this is the song where Bosio looked right in the eye of everyone that said, "Oh, if Bruford's not playing, I'm not interested," and said, "Okay, take that."
out.
You know, this
Yes.
is where I tell you I'm here.
Yeah.
And he did, Jack. He
Oh
really,
yeah.
really did.
Oh yeah.
Extended by,
Kind of sounds like what ELP should have been doing. You know what I mean?
well, I think one of the reasons why Bruford left, I've read him say this in interviews. He did not want to be ELP Junior.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
And apparently there were discussions toward that fact. But it's interesting because the record does not bear out as being really that much of an ELP kind of disciple, even because
No,
it really walks its own path.
no, it does.
Um,
It does.
they were, I
I
mean,
hear
this
little bits of ELP in there, but
sure. Well, and at the time, ELP was making Love Beach,
that's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. It's like,
which is, I like it better than a lot of people, but still, it was not like the ELP of old. You
no, it
know,
wasn't. No.
Danger Money is kind of maybe ELP would kind of catch up to this with the Powell record in
Right.
particular.
Yeah.
They would kind of go, okay, maybe it's all right to make an album like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see here. Nothing to Lose. This is where we really hear Proto Asia, I think.
Nothing to lose. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what a great song, and it was really good live too. I saw them open for Jethro Tull, and they played this song, and
Oh, okay. All right.
uh, it was really, they were so powerful live. The three of them just made
Yeah.
an incredible racket.
Oh
They
yeah.
were unbelievably. They were louder than Tull, I think, but I
Yeah.
think that was part of what they were going for.
That's Scott. That's my first note on this song is this feels like pre-Asia song.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
Yeah.
And there's, I mean, that's probably rooted in the fact that it's John Wetton.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
not to be, pedantic, but that's probably where that's coming from.
Yeah.
And then finally, Carrying No Cross. Let me tell you about Carrying No Cross. I want Carrying No Cross played at my services after I get promoted, which I like to say. I don't like to say died or passed away. I like to say promoted.
Oh, I like that. I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
An old dear friend of mine who died a number of years back used to say promoted, and I really appreciated that. I thought it was a much more, no matter what you believe, um, yeah, you hope you're promoted to something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, that I want Carrying No Cross played at my gathering. That's how much this song means to me.
Wow.
I
Wow.
think it's an epic in the grand tradition of progressive epics. As a matter of fact, I think Carrying No Cross is the last moment, the last gasp of the classic progressive era, from
Makes
the last real progressive band of that era,
agreed. Agreed.
until the neo prog movement a few
Right.
years later.
Yeah.
Um, I think Carrying No Cross stands up there with all the classic epics: Song for America, Tarkus,
Yeah.
Close to the Edge, Supper's Ready. I would put it shoulder to shoulder with all of those great epic tracks. It First of all, recapitulation. It starts with a soft, slow section, and it ends with that same section. I
Mhm.
love when epic pieces do that. Song for America is another example. It doesn't. It has a section at the beginning, but the second slower tempo section is also the end section. I love it when it comes back around.
Mhm.
Close to the Edge is another one that does that.
Sure.
Tarkus does that
Yep.
as well.
Yeah.
Supper's Ready doesn't really do that, but
Yeah.
that recapitulation is something that's really cool.
Mhm.
Uh, the other things Carry No Cross has going for it is just absolutely wild playing from every
Oh,
instrument they
just
have in their arsenal. Wetton does his vocal at the beginning and at the end, and the middle of it is just
it's
complete
almost
madness.
anarchy. Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of Magnum Opus from Kansas in that way, where it has a little vocal section at the beginning and this just complete instrumental madness to the end.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I love Carrying No Cross. I love this whole album. It was very pivotal for me from the first time I heard this record, and I'm proud to say that one of my prized possessions is a fully autographed copy from
Oh,
all
that's
three members.
so cool. Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah. That's um, if the house is burning down, I'm going to grab the cats and then this record.
Go, honey, go get my UK teacher money.
But yeah, for my own brain, as I referenced earlier, uh, the first UK album is more important to the appreciator in my head. Danger Money is more important to the composer in my head, the person who makes records and tries to please myself on that level.
Yeah.
Uh, I will admit I freely steal at least intent, if not ideas or arrangement things. Certainly intent. I'll say. There's a song on the new album that if anyone's paying attention, you can tell which UK song I borrowed the concept from. It
Hmm.
very much echoes that. Like I said, it's not so much robbing, even though robbing from the best is what you do if you're thinking right.
Right.
It's really more an intent or a concept that I said, okay, I'm going to try something that behaves in this way.
Hmm.
So that's where the two records fall for me. Um, One appeals to one side of my brain, and the other appeals to the other more. Although my whole brain loves both of them. Um,
Exactly. It's like picking your children. It's like, come on, this is too hard.
yeah.
Yeah. So Scott, as usual, just does a fantastic job with the breakdowns of the songs. Uh,
Thank you.
and yeah, I definitely hear at times, I know he didn't want to be ELP Junior, but there are definitely times where I think, oh man, this is ELP-esque.
Yeah.
uh, in a great way, like I love it. Like this is great. It almost sounds like Keith Emerson's playing. I mean, he has the organ sound at times where you're like, whoa, sounds like Keith's in the background or something. Uh,
Right.
but and that's like a compliment because I absolutely love ELP. So anything that sounds remotely like classic ELP, I'm all in.
Yep.
Um, so but it also has a little bit more, as you're mentioning, some of the songs like, the title track, Rendezvous 602, Nothing to Lose. There's some more like straight ahead. I think this was Wetton's vision, straight ahead rock more. There's still some great progressive music on this record, don't get me wrong. But
Mhm.
there's some songs also that kind of hit straight ahead, a little more pop, like a little more rock,
Right.
you
And
know.
they sort of continued that with, I can see it over your left shoulder there. They sort of continued some of that with Night After Night, the song Night After Night, which was
Yes.
written for it was written for these concerts.
Take me
Um,
focus,
and
yeah.
then As Long as You Want Me Here was also the new song there.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
but they were pointed in that direction and just were, I don't know. I think there was something unique and special and wonderful about that band, and it's just too bad they weren't encouraged just a little bit more, um, to the point where they felt they wanted to continue rather than packing it in. Of
Right.
course, of
Right.
course, John went on to extraordinary, huge worldwide success.
Massive success. Yeah.
Bosio didn't do too badly with Missing Persons, another one of my very favorite bands of that era.
Right. Right.
Um, and Eddie Jobson is, boy, if you don't know about some of Jobson's solo work, he did an album with the Synclavier called Theme of Secrets.
Hmm.
that is stunningly beautiful music. I absolutely adored it. It got lumped in with new age at the time because it was on private music, but Jobson always, and he did an album called the Green Album, which was a band album, a very progressive band album. It suffers a little bit from his voice, which is not necessarily, well, it's not John Wetton's voice. He has a pleasant harmony voice, probably not a good lead voice, but I like the way he sings on that album. But it's not quite as strong as, had John sung that album, we'd probably be lumping it in with this other stuff. Have you
Yeah.
heard the Green Album?
Yes, I've heard it. Yes,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
really, it's good. Very good.
yeah. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so anyway, so we come to that time in the episode where we have to, unfortunately, we have to pick one of these.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to it, and there's many factors involved, and I get a lot of flack from people on the comments about like, well, what's this battle thing? Who can What do you mean battle? Like, who can And it's like we just do this to talk about the records. That's all it is. Just
Yeah,
talking about the music. It's just an excuse to talk about these records. That's all it is. So,
absolutely.
and and there's so many things that go into what your favorite is. It could be my favorite this month or this week. You know what I mean?
Or right now.
Or right now.
It might change when we shut this off.
Exactly. So what are you thinking if you have, I mean, I hate to do it to you, but what are you thinking on this one?
Well, in the
Or how are
last
you
few
feeling this week?
years of my life, my listening habits have been very much shaped by what inspires me in a compositional sense. And um, my records are progressive rock records. There's very little fusion about them. So if
Yeah.
I've got to pick one, I'm going to pick Danger Money.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's because of it speaks to me right now, the headspace that I'm in, you know, trying to make records in that world, in that progressive rock world. Um, that is the one that inspires that part of my brain. That doesn't mean that I won't put on that first UK album and just be completely blown away by it.
Right. Right.
For
Right.
me, it's not a matter of which one I prefer,
Hmm.
but which one suits my particular mood at the time or what I need it for. In a
Right.
few years' time, maybe I've stopped writing altogether. Maybe, my recording career is over and
Right.
I would swing back to the first album. But for me, on balance, I have to say Danger Money.
Okay. All right. Fair
Yep.
enough. Fair enough. I'm gonna go with the first record because it's just a sentimental thing for me. And it's just the mood I'm in right now. Like you just said, it's really the mood I'm in at the moment is I want to hear the Alan Hallsworth craziness. Uh
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear him spraying all over the track. His
Yeah, as he
sound,
does.
you know. And I just, for some reason, and I love those ominous, man, when I was listening to this for this episode, I was just and I those ominous chords that hit in the middle of the suite, and when
Oh yeah, yeah,
those things that just and
yeah.
you're like
That's that CS80 Portamento
oh my
again.
God, you feel like you're like floating in space.
Uh,
It's crazy.
yeah, it's yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I'll
I
agree.
Oh, I just love it. So, but however, that's not to say that if I'm in a different type of mood, Danger Money's going to be my pick because, and I say this a lot, but this does happen where you do these sort of you're doing your homework for this episode and you're
Mhm.
listening to these albums again with fresh ears, and I'm listening to Danger Money. I'm like, oh my God, I forgot how
Yeah,
great this album is. Holy
yeah.
moly! And
Carrying no crosses by
oh
itself is an absolutely a monumental achievement of just proper prog. That's what it
yeah,
is. I mean,
yeah.
if you want to look up the definition in Wikipedia, there should be a picture of the album Danger Money. That's proper prog.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, I
Yeah.
agree. And only thing she needs is another one that's such a killer. I mean, that's a
Oh,
killer. I mean, they end each side with just killer prog tracks.
yep. Yep. Yeah.
Um,
It just, I like I said, my composer's brain warms up to Danger Money and is inspired by it and goes, I want to write something that makes me feel the way I feel when I hear that.
Yeah.
That's what really drives my writing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yes. And so anyway, so there you go, folks. There it is.
we finally landed on opposite sides.
Yeah, we actually disagreed for once. Shocked. Um,
Never happened before, folks.
that's the good. It's the spice of life, right? It's spice of life.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, we actually disagreed for once, but you cannot lose with either of these records. Let's be honest. I mean,
No.
and the difference is like it's like I mean, it's not even really that. It's just they're equal. It's just depending on your mood. It's really kind of
And
wherever.
that's because they're such different records. They
Yeah,
really are very different, even though they're both UK, um, and have many of the same qualities. They're quite different. Yep.
yeah, absolutely. So I have to say, if you stuck with us this long, we really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Let us know in the comments what you think. What's your favorite of these two? What's your take on UK? Um, and always, I always have to say, give us a like, give it a like and subscribe if you like what you see. It helps the channel. I appreciate it. Also, want to say that of course Scott is Myth of Logic. I'm gonna lead. He has 3 records out, and he's working on a 4th one right now. I'm gonna leave a link below to his music. You check that out. Um, but um, but thank you, Scott. Thanks again for joining
Oh
us.
yeah, always a pleasure. Always a lot of fun. I'll
Yeah,
I'll be looking forward to the next one.
absolutely. All right, folks, that's it for tonight. Take care. See you next time on Curless Mania. We're out.